Hey everyone, welcome back to the BritHick. This is episode 14 with myself, Connor, and the lovely Aaron, as always. We're recording slightly earlier this week, and it happens to be Dimebag Darrell's birthday. So, pour one out, whatever you fancy, to one of the greatest metal guitarists probably to have ever lived, and I'm not going to debate that. It's a fact. We've just had a brief catch up. We're not really gonna do an overview of the week this time around because it's a Thursday. Not an awful lot has happened. So we're pretty much gonna get into the meat of it. I don't know if there's anything you want to mention quickly before we crack on, Aaron, at all.
No, just I've been off this week, but haven't done a great deal because the weather's not been great. It was all right today, so I went for a walk, but that's probably the sum of it really for this week. So. Good to crack on.
Yeah, I broke my phone, which is annoying, and that's about it.
That was last week, wasn't it?
I know, but we haven't spoken about it, so...
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, this week we're going to talk about the concept of separating the art from the artists, in terms of musicians, actors. You know, everyone's well aware of the concept, but it's something I've kind of thought about this week, where I've been listening to music and listening to reviews and kind of retrospective of people's careers and controversies and stuff. And I guess as well, it's quite a hot, for want of a better descriptor, it's kind of a hot topic in this day and age. You know, there's a lot of incidences of people being cancelled and such, sometimes warranted, to be fair. I'm not going to give an opinion on that right now, but that is kind of the burning point of it. It's like, to what degree can you separate the person from what they create and still find it palatable, I guess. How do you kind of feel about this, Aaron, when it comes to like music and creative arts?
I'm kind of like in a weird middle position with it. Like, I know people that will just stop listening to everything that someone's done, full stop, if like something comes out about them, or watching or whatever. But I was thinking about it because obviously we're saying about Dimebag, and I posted a photo of him, and I had someone say to him, "Oh, why are you posting that racist like on it?" And it's like, well, it's still a big influence. Don't listen to it a lot now, but it was like an influence the same way that kind of bands like ZZ Top and Metallica and Deep Purple were when I was quite young. But I don't know. It's difficult because like I don't listen to it as much in the same way that I don't listen to black metal as much as I used to. But that's not because it's not in a reaction to the scene and people's opinions outside of what they're putting out. That's just how my tastes have changed. It's kind of like, are people going to stop watching films like The Usual Suspects and Seven because Kevin Spacey's in it? I don't know. Like, I mean, it hasn't stopped me watching them. I mean, it would probably stop me watching if he put anything new out, but the stuff that's already out, I would probably still watch. It's when it's not in the output. So if it's not racist or sex, or I don't know, like it's difficult to bring up sexism, and then you're going to start talking about bands like Cannibal Corpse with their actual lyrical output compared to what they believe. But bands like Screwdriver, where the lyrics are quite obviously anti-Semitic and racist, like, I'm not going to listen to that. However, I've listened to Watain, and there's there's a photo of one of them doing a Nazi salute. But at the same time, there's a photo of Metallica, 2 of them doing Nazi salutes. So it's difficult.
Yeah, I think that's a good point as well about, and something I'll expand on as we get into the discussion as well. I think when the music itself, obviously you can only really speak in terms of lyrical content because that conveys the message. When the music conveys those like particular viewpoints, like for example, like Screwdriver's a good example. It's overtly racist music made by racists. It's almost, you can't separate those two things, and it's not something any decent person's going to want to listen to and consume. But when you've got someone who might be an absolute prick, like example of this is Varg and Burzum.
Yeah, the thing is, I didn't. Well, we're obviously going to have to bring him up, but Burzum's something that I've never listened to.
Yeah.
Either way, but even when I was into black metal, Burzum wasn't something that I personally listened to.
Yeah.
Bellis, which is the first album that he released, that he put out after he got released, I thought was okay. But the stuff before he got put in prison, the stuff that he wrote during prison, and like the other albums afterwards, none of them have really grabbed me musically, so I haven't listened to them.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few tracks in that that I'm not gonna lie and say it's all amazing, because a lot of it's crap, but there's some of it I really enjoy and I'll listen to it. But I know his like nationalistic views, and he's actually a murderer as well. That's another kettle of fish. But so he's not a nice person, but those views aren't expressed in his music. So I can listen to the music knowing full well he's an arsehole. But if it was, if the nationalism, was expressed in his music and his lyrics, I wouldn't be able to listen to it. I wouldn't feel comfortable listening to it and supporting it.
Yeah, I guess there's like a weird intersection with like John from Dissection. Dissection lyrics aren't overtly racist, but sometimes if you read between the lines, you could construe it in regards to like a purity thing. But it's difficult. Like that is, I mean, John from Dissection was a head case, so it's difficult to kind of say about it. But lots of people still listen to it, and it seems like more people are more likely to jump on certain individuals over others.
Yeah, definitely.
So I feel like that what John did isn't as widely publicized in the general community compared to Varg or Phil Anselmo or Dimebag or I don't know. I'm just trying to think of other Samoth, but Samoth was for church burning, so it's a bit different. But Faust for killing a gay man.
Yeah.
So it's I feel it's a weird one because I feel like he was more extreme in his opinions.
Faust.
No, not a Faust. John from Dissection.
Oh right, sorry.
Faust isn't an odd one because like he never. He said that he killed him, but he killed him in self-defense, and he's never swayed from that at any point.
Right.
So it's difficult to say about if Faust is truly homophobic or not, because he has said that he's not, and it wasn't a homophobic killing, and that he killed him in self-defense. But that's not what the court said. The court said he was guilty of murder. So, But another thing as well, which needs to be taken into account, is that 2020 is not 1994.
No, yeah.
Especially in countries like Scandinavia, or countries like Scandinavia, regions like Scandinavia.
Good geography, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Chin beard geography.
Yeah. So when I've spoken to people that I went to university with that were from Norway and Sweden, they did say that people of that age that were born in the 70s and earlier, or like that, say more actually like 60s and earlier,
Okay.
were very white nationalism as a default,
Right.
because of the percentage of white people in these countries was very high.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of immigration, and then all of a sudden they did, and they did have an influx of immigrants, which for the vast majority of the population was an issue. And this is something that I was thinking of when we were going to start discussing this, is that I went to a 98% white school. My entire class throughout my entire school years was white. And there was definitely homophobic, sexist and racist stuff that was said during my time at school that I didn't think was a problem. And it's only through education and meeting people of different colours and creeds that makes you realise that stuff isn't appropriate and is wrong.
Yeah.
For example, I got sent a video of Dimebag from either NAMM 2002 or NAMM 2003 where he's doing a signing.
Yeah.
And he says to a kid that's got a Washburn guitar that he wants to sign, he says, "I won't sign it until you play it." And he says, "Let's see if this N-word can play."
Oh, shit.
But it's a white guy
Yeah.
that you're saying it to. No one reacts. There's no gasps. No one kind of double takes or anything. It's just said.
Yeah.
The issue is that it's said very casually.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's said almost as a replacement for guy. Like he says it instead of, "Let's see if this guy can play."
Yeah.
He says the N-word. Obviously, there's a whole thing with him having the rebel flag on the guitar. There were proponents of heritage, not hate. The problem for me is that I'm a guy that is 31 years old and living in the UK. I am not someone that is 35, 40, 50 years old living in Arlington, Texas. So I don't know the group of people that he was hanging around with. So this is a long-winded way of saying, when I was at school surrounded by people that were saying things, I said them and didn't think there was a problem. In somewhat the same way that I think a lot of these people were surrounded by other people that were saying the same stuff and they didn't think that there was a problem and they weren't challenged.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dimebag's dead, so there isn't a way to say whether or not he would have doubled down on his previous opinions, or if he would have gone, "No, I'm wrong. I apologise for my previous statements." So on and so forth. So it's difficult. And stuff like that's kind of hazy, whereas with the Norwegian black metal stuff, it's quite obvious with a lot of them.
Yeah.
They're kind of unashamedly, they wouldn't even say that they're racists. They would say that they're white nationalists, and they would say that they're part of a superior race, which is different.
Yeah,
it's different.
Definitely. I mean, like, it's kind of tricky for me to explain this, and I hope I don't word it in a clumsy way. I don't want to upset anyone, and I hope what I'm trying to voice comes across clearly. Obviously, racism in any form is shitty. Like, I know that's a very mild way of putting it, but it's unacceptable. It's horrible, racism. But there's racism that comes from ignorance, and like you're saying, you don't have experience of interaction or respect of other people's cultures and lives and experiences. So it comes from ignorance, and that can be changed. Like fundamentally, most people, they might, if you, like you're saying, all you've experienced is these things that surround you, and it's all seen as like, oh, that's fine, that's all cricket. I know there's a lot of shitheads in the world, and I know the world's not in a great place at the moment. But fundamentally, I think most people do want to be decent. And when you have your eyes open to like actually what you're doing could be harmful and like to other people, demeaning, like, most people be like, oh fuck, and take stock of that. So there's racism born out of ignorance, I think, can be changed. But obviously, when you're talking about like black metal and, well, not just black metal, but anyone with like nationalist views, like supremacist views and stuff, that's a difference here. That's like unapologetic, and it's like you're willfully, it's hateful, isn't it? And it's meant to be harmful. It's
Yeah, I think that is one way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's there's a level of indoctrination as well. You have to think that if people are being raised the same with like religion and things, if they're raised into a highly religious family, odds are they're going to be a similar denomination of religion, because that's just what they've heard their entire lives. So if people are being raised hearing that anyone that isn't white is inferior or closer to being an animal than you are, then it takes deprogramming, I guess.
Yeah.
Which isn't like, it's a kind of very regimented way of thinking about it, because it's not, there isn't a deprogramming course for racism or like heavy sexism, misogyny, or like anything like that. So yeah, but like back to the thing of like separating art from the artist. If we go back to like the Kevin Spacey thing, because the Kevin Spacey thing isn't racism.
No,
that's paedophilia, essentially. Well, the weird thing is that when I worked in London and I was working alongside actors that were doing kind of bit parts for TV and theatre.
Yeah.
And one of them said, like, on a night out, oh yeah, Kevin Spacey has underage boy actors sent to his dressing room.
Jesus.
We're like, that's weird. And it was like, yeah, but in the UK, 17, 18's all right. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Even though I think the consensual age for gay sex in the UK is 18. But and that was just the thing that was said. And it was like, yeah, he's gay. He likes young men. And that was just a thing, and that was in 2012.
So yeah, not really long ago in the scheme of things.
Well, no, it was a lot. But if you think that's 8 years ago, 7 years after that was when, or 6 years after that was when he got outed. So it was.
Oh, but I mean, in terms of like attitudes, then it's still like you would know like, that is wrong. Yeah. That's what I meant. Sorry.
But it's the thing of, funnily enough, he was in House of Cards, but it was once the cards started falling, people could start saying stuff.
Yeah.
Because as far as I'm aware, those young actors that would go in there, there would have probably been blacklisted if they had spoken out. The same way that there was with Weinstein, there was people that were saying stuff, and even then, like during the Me Too movement, they were still being kind of shunned and not taken seriously. So I kind of lost my train of thought of where I was going with, but just the stuff. Am I gonna rip off my Pulp Fiction poster or the frame that I've got on my wall because Weinstein was involved? No, I'm not. Am I going to stop watching Seven because Kevin Spacey's in it? No, I'm not. Because they're films that I like. And is there anything, well, I say abhorrent, but Seven's a horror film, so it's kind of abhorrent what's in it. But would I watch something that Kevin Spacey put out now? No, probably not. Would I watch something? Would I go out and watch something that Weinstein puts his name on? No, probably not. But I've watched the stuff previously, and I like the films. So I don't know. It's a weird one because I'm not giving them any money.
Yeah.
By watching the films, I've already watched them. I have them, so I continue watching them. It's like the Metallica fans with Napster when they were burning the albums and stuff outside the courthouse. Great, you've already given them your money.
Yeah.
You're just burning stuff that you own. Like they don't give a shit. Like they have your money already. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna. I guess the one that I have stopped watching is probably Louis C.K.
Right. Okay.
But Louis C.K. is playing him. It's not playing a character. He's himself.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a difference in that because he's doing stand-up as himself, and you know that he is a person that was masturbating on the phone to various people in the industry. It's kind of like, well, that's a bit more, I don't know, not uncomfortable, but it's him. It's not playing a part, it's him.
Yeah. Yeah, I get.
And I think of music as a similar thing, is that when you're in a band, you're playing a role, you're playing a part. I guess it's a bit different if you're a singer-songwriter and it's all you. But when you're in a band, you're a cog in a machine. It's not just about you. I don't know. People probably vehemently disagree with me about it, but yeah.
Well, no, that's actually a very good point, I think. And there's a couple of things that I can take. Well, there's a couple of things that when I've been thinking about this earlier on about things I want to discuss, that kind of does segue into a couple of bits nicely. So the point you made about when you're in a band, you're kind of like a cog, or like it's a character, or whatever. It's not just you as a person kind of thing. There's certainly instances of that, I think, but then there's definitely I think there's a line, isn't there, where it does cross over to it's things go too far, and it's like you can't shut it out or disassociate from that when you hear the music. So obviously a really blatant example of this is Ian Watkins.
Yeah.
That's what happened, what he did, and was what he was rightly sentenced for. And personally, it's going to sound really, I don't mean this in a selfish way. Oh, it doesn't affect me because I wasn't a Lost Prophets fan. Obviously, I don't mean like in terms of his crimes. His crimes are abhorrent and he's a fucking disgusting piece of shit. But it wasn't, to me, it wasn't like, oh, I can't listen to Lost Prophets anymore. I wasn't listening to Lost Prophets anyway. But if I hear a Lost Prophets song now, I automatically think of Ian Watkins and what he did.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, this is Lost Prophets. And it's shit for the rest of that band because obviously their careers are just over. You can't, like, it was such a horrible thing. Like, you can't escape from under the cloud of that. And that's, that's and so on. But then one that we've discussed this before, like just in chats and whatever, like the whole Tim Lambesis situation. With
I was going to say about that after you said about Ian Watkins.
Yeah. And it's like, for me, Obviously I'm not the voice of the law, but for me, like what Tim Lambesis tried to do is also fucking awful. It's not the same. It's not. It's not the same as being a predatory paedophile, but it's still an awful thing that he tried to do. He tried to take a hit out on his wife.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've found a lot of hypocrisy from people within the scene that are kind of willing to like welcome him back and like, oh, has a lay down her back. It's like the guy's a fucking dickhead. And
yeah, so I never really listened to Azalea Dying. I saw them live once. No, twice. I saw them once at a festival and once because Suicide Silence was supporting. Solid live band. I was more into the whole Austrian Death Machine stuff that he was in, but that was just him doing the majority of it. But yeah, after that came out, I guess that was a band that I stopped listening to. I guess the difference is, it's gonna sound really weird, is that like they're people that have actually gone and done stuff. And I know that Varg's killed someone, but that wasn't a race crime.
Yeah, yeah.
Like people are saying stuff which is bad and call them out on it, which is where I'm like, I probably won't watch do the newer stuff. But yeah, I never listened to Lost Prophets anyway, but you can't really listen to them, and I don't listen to Austrian Death Machine anymore. I don't know if this this is where it starts getting like you start picking holes in things because you're like, well, I don't listen to this one, but I do listen to this one, and
yeah, and I think it's really interesting. I say really interesting. I think we're all guilty of it. Like, it wouldn't be fair of me to say, oh, I don't do this, like, and whatever, but I think people react. I guess it depends where certain transgressions or certain crimes register, like, on your personal moral compass. Like, obviously, it goes without saying that any reasonable, sane, at least shred of decency in a person is not going to be on board with someone being a pedo. That's pretty much a given. So I don't mean that, but for example, like, I'm not going to go on about bloody Burzum for the whole episode, but yeah, Varga Kern's murdered someone, but to me, it's like that doesn't bother me enough for me to not listen to like any Burzum kind of thing. But then
the context of the murder was that they had a disagreement, and then one of them ended up dead. It wasn't a premeditated, or like it wasn't a premeditated hate crime, supposedly.
Yeah, it sounds flippant,
and it wasn't
like the way
it wasn't like. By comparison, if Varg had gone out and killed a Jewish person because he's an anti-Semite,
yeah,
I feel like that's a very different thing.
The Varg and Euronymous thing, like, not to be flippant about it because someone died, but that was stupid bravado between two young men who wanted to be the big fish in the pond. And it got out of hand. That's really what it comes to. People can romanticize it all they want, and you can be revisionist about it all you want, but that's literally what it boiled down to. It's just two egos running out of control, and it unfortunately got out of hand. If you want to boil it down to what it really was.
I think context is important.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's, you've hit the nail on the head. You just described what I was floundering to describe. But yeah, context is important, and there are things that are unforgivable, and Ian Watkins is one of them. And then this is, for me, the Tim Lambesis thing. I think it's like, I believe that people should have a chance to God's sake,
redeem
themselves. I was about to say repent. I was like, wait, that's not the right word. People should have a chance.
Well, in his context, it kind of is, because did he find God again, or is he not? I don't know.
I guess it depends what they're trying to sell on any given week, if they're Christian or not, as a lay dying. But yeah,
that's what fucks me off when I saw Impending Doom. They did a bloody thing before their last song about God and Jesus and stuff. I was like, oh, put me right off.
Yeah. But with Tim Lambesis, it's like, you know, people have a chance to redeem themselves. I'm not disputing that. Like, some things aren't redeemable, like, but, you know, yeah, you got a chance to redeem yourself. But it's a very cynical way it all came about, and I honestly, I don't believe he's redeemed himself. I don't believe he's, like, it was all a bit Hollywood for me, like, oh, the band's like, oh, we're going to have this round table discussion, and we're going to put Tim on the spot, and all this. I was like, this is fucking rubbish. This is, you know, that band know what side their bread's buttered on.
Yeah, if Woven War had been successful,
yeah,
would they have been having that conversation?
Yeah, and when
it's not for me to say whether or not it would have happened or not, but
yeah, and like
they tried to have a go at it without him, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
To be fair, I've listened to the post-release As I Lay Dying. Did they do a post-release song or a post-release?
Yeah, they put a couple of tracks out. I think they put an album. I think there might be an album out. I'm a bit out of the loop, but
yeah, I've definitely heard some As I Lay Dying stuff post, and I've heard the Woven War stuff because I was interested. And the As I Lay Dying material is better. So why weren't they doing it with the Woven War stuff? I have no idea. But Woven War fell on its ass.
Yeah, I think actually as well, like definitely with the early stuff, Tim was a big writer, but like in terms of like riffs and stuff as well. I don't know if that is still the case now. So maybe that's why the bar was. I'm not disputing his abilities, obviously, but maybe that's why the bar was so higher with As I Lay Dying material.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe that was why they ate their own shit and got back into bed with him.
And that's what rubbed me up the wrong way a lot about it. There were so many. I've forgotten a lot of the members' names now, but Nick, I think it's Nick something, the lead guitarist.
Nick Hooper.
That's it, yeah. Hooper? Like, he was like, I will never work with him again. I can never forgive him for what he's done to us. Like, he's dead. Basically, he's dead to me, like, to that effect. And now it's like, well, what? Now you've jumped back into bed with him, like, and it just smacks to me of like, oh yeah, we know where the cheddar is, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean, did you see his interview with Ola?
Nick Hibbard?
Yeah.
No, I didn't watch. I can't remember if I watched that one or not.
He seemed quite sincere.
Yeah.
I'll be honest about what went down. But ulterior motive is As I Lay Dying are going to make bank.
Yeah.
Compared to anything that Woven War were doing. So, are we being overly cynical? Maybe. Are we telling it like it is? Maybe also.
Coming straight with the facts. Sorry.
The thing is, though, is I can't think of another situation. I don't know, like the whole Phil white wine thing.
Yeah.
He has a history of it. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, cancel Pantera." I love Pantera. Like, and again, with Pantera, it's not a case of like those views are in the music, whatever. They're not perfect people, and I'm not going to argue the toss that they are. But their music, I still love their music. I still like and stuff. But it's like I'm not gonna sweep under the rug like that. Phil has had a history of doing shit like that. Like, we've all seen the footage, you know.
I think the telltale thing is that he checked himself into rehab like a week after.
Yeah.
And I guess this is the problem: is we've been very cynical of As I Lay Dying. We need to be very cynical of Phil and his various projects, basically. Be it Down or Scour or what's the other one? Shit. The Illegals or Superjoint Ritual. Like any of them. They are fronted by someone who has, for many occasions, said bad shit.
Yeah.
And yeah, as far as I'm aware, every time that he has said them, he has been off of his face on either drugs or alcohol. But it still doesn't really excuse it. And it's one of those things where it's like, up until 2016, it was still like, oh, I don't know. And then that thing came out, and it was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then he checked himself into rehab, and there was X, Y, and Z going on, and it's like, and people came out and defended him and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, and what someone said to me is, racists will treat certain people of color well,
Yeah.
but then treat all the other ones like property. So it's no good having black people in his circle of friends saying he's a decent dude when he's still doing Zeke Hiles and saying white power.
Yeah, fair point.
Again, it's a difficult situation, and I think this comes into our own biases. We like Pantera and Down and Superjoint Ritual more than As I Lay Dying.
Yeah, it's like it's just a funny one.
But again,
like
he hasn't committed physical offence, as in attacked or insinuated an attack on someone, whereas Tim Lambesis tried to hire a hitman to kill his wife.
Yeah.
This is where it starts to muddy the waters, and where people can very easily pick holes in your argument.
Yeah.
Because there's no grey in a lot of people. It's either, well, you listen to everyone or you listen to no one. And if you listen to no one, you might as well just exclude all black metal, apart from stuff like Dawn Raid. And it gets really fucked, basically.
Yeah. I think with and this is the thing, like, don't like with the point I was making about Tim Lambesis, like, if people want to listen to I think my fault is more my issue is more, I think, with the band. Right. If people I probably didn't explain that very well. If people still want to listen to As I Lay Dying, like, fair enough, crack on. Like, it's not gonna upset me. What pissed me off was the way the band kind of approached it. I was like, this seems to have been swept under the rug really quickly. Kind of like, oh yeah, we're going to move on. We're going to help Tim, like, become better. And it's like, all right, like, I'm going to be a bit cynical of this. But what really pissed me off is, like, all the fan, like, the real die-hard fan base, and even some of the more casual fans, like, oh, he's done his time. Like, if the band have forgiven him, no one should be criticising him. It's like, well, I'm sorry. He's come out of a relatively short prison sentence. Let's be real. He was in prison for a couple of years. He's come out of prison. He's basically gone straight back into his old career. He's gonna make decent money doing that. What about his fucking wife? His ex-wife? Like, no child. No one's speaking about them. Like, about, oh, are they okay? How do they feel about this? Imagine that. Oh, my husband, who I thought loved me, tried to get me killed, and now he's going to be in the spotlight again all the time. Like, and that's just like, a lot of it's like, I find it hypocritical. There's so many people, like, I'm not going to name names, like, you see it in the scene all the time. Oh, we need to respect women more. You know, we need to make it a safer space for women. Oh, Tim Lambesis is back. Fucking brilliant. It's like, pick one, mate. Like,
I think there is some kind of alimony, which means that a percentage of his future earnings will go to his wife.
But
I mean, maybe I don't. Yeah, I can't confirm that. But
it's just kind of that discrepancy between, like, those people would literally, you know, when it comes. I'm not saying it's all right, but when it comes out and, you know, on Facebook or something, someone in a band, like, as mistreated a girl or done something dodgy like that, they'll be the first people piling into the drama. And in the same instance of, like, oh, we should really move on and just forgive this geezer who tried to get his wife killed. It's like, hang about. Like, what? Just because you like As I Lay Dying doesn't mean that's okay. Like, you can listen to the band, that's fine. But don't go on like this geezer's like suddenly like a reformed character. I just don't believe it happens that quickly.
Yeah.
But also a point of that, and you've like a good point, like a really solid point you've made there is like, I think there is an element of bias to these things, and I think we are like everyone's a bit guilty of it in some aspects. Like, so one for me is I find it mental that people can just like listen to Chris Brown and his songs about being Mr. Loverman, and it's like, you battered Rihanna.
Yeah, I was going to mention about like it's not just obviously metal.
Oh no, of course
You've
not.
got-
You've just it's every genre has this like things like this.
You think about like the killings and stuff in the 90s between Bloods and Crips and various rappers and all that kind of stuff that was going on, and it's not really spoken about in the same way that maybe some of the metal stuff gets spoken about, but then I don't know because we're not in that circle, so it's difficult to say.
I think
the Chris Brown one's obvious because it was like it was in the mainstream news.
Yeah, and I think the discrepancies there between how that stuff is like kind of perceived and reacted to in metal compared to like, you know, in the peak of that stuff happening in hip hop and rap, like the beefs and people were getting killed and stuff. I think the media has a big part to play in that, and how it's digested. Like with metal and stuff, it's almost like it's almost like a hangover of the whole, like, this is gonna be a really bad explanation. I hope it comes across in the way that I'm meaning to. It's almost kind of like the kind of hangover or carrying on of the whole satanic panic thing. It's like, oh, metal's full of these nutters, and you know, it's always got, a lot of the time it's got like, it's has Satanism tacked onto it, and it's like, oh, this is like, it's almost like otherworldly and like, oh, they're just mental and stuff. Where I think really when it came to hip hop stuff, it was like, as much as there was a moral panic about it, it's because it's more obviously murdered. Those people did get murdered in black metal scene and stuff, but because it's like, it's gritty and it's on the streets and it's almost like it's tangible drama, and I think wrongly it's used to kind of, people are so drawn to it. And obviously the record labels and stuff knew it was like, oh yeah, we can sell units with this, like these dangerous artists and stuff. And I think the media kind of has a lot to answer for that. It's almost glamorized, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Well, that was like what we said last week with the black metal stuff, that the media got hold of it, said it was dangerous, and then all of a sudden loads of people wanted to jump on board.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's that whole like sex sells thing, but it's with violence, essentially instead. So it gives people notoriety, and it makes people stick in their minds.
And then like, yeah, like for me, the Chris Brown thing baffles me because his audience are predominantly female.
Yeah,
and that's what I don't get. It's this association. It's like this. It's like, again, it's like, you want to listen to this guy, fine. Like, I'm not going to tell you not to listen to him, but I'm just like, how do you like disregard the fact that he did batter a woman? And I think he's punched another woman as well. Like, he's kind of done it a couple of times. He's just not a very nice guy by all accounts. Like,
you end up with victim blaming.
Yeah,
basically, is that, oh well, she obviously pushed him to do it, or like she wasn't the right person for him, and it just starts falling down those lines, and then by that point you've absolved the person of all blame because you've just shifted it to obviously he was made to do it. Like, well,
no, yeah, exactly.
No, it wasn't like so.
But it's, yeah, I think this is where I find this topic really interesting, I guess, is the best way to describe it, because it's interesting to see. Yeah, it's how people perceive certain actions and like how people will see things as not as bad as others. Like, and also the varying degrees of how those actions kind of remains hacked onto someone's career. So the Chris Brown thing, obviously everyone knows it, and it's detractors and that will mention it a lot, and even it would be unfair to say, oh, all of his fans will ignore it. I'm sure they don't. I'm sure there are people that listen to him and be like, oh, I like his music, but he is a prick. Like, it's like we've said it about us. It's like, I like their music, but they are pricks. But for example, Dre in the 90s or like early 90s, he beat up Dee Barnes, who was like an MTV host. She was a woman.
Yeah.
You don't really hear about that now.
No.
It was mentioned, like, I think Eminem mentioned it in, I can't remember, Eminem mentioned it in a lyric, like, kind of like jokingly. Obviously, but and that, I guess that goes to show as well. It's almost like oh, it's all right to like laugh about this. This was like the early 2000s, and like, don't get me wrong, like, I like Dr. Dre and stuff, but it's like, and I don't believe in just dragging. You shouldn't sweep things under the carpet and pretend it never happened. But then equally, like, it's not fair to always, like, you can't drag things up as well. And I believe he did address that and apologise for it. I might be wrong, but I believe it did happen. Obviously, it's still awful. Like, he's a grown man beating a woman up. Like, there's no excuse for that. But it's kind of different, isn't it? It's like when you get people with such a legacy and stuff, it's almost just like, oh, it doesn't matter. We ignored all of that. And I guess to an extent you could say it about Michael Jackson, even though that is a bit of a funny one, because it's still to this day, it's like, did he do it? Did he not?
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like when artists are kind of a certain stature, they're kind of like untouched by their past like missteps and stuff. I'd even say the same about like Led Zeppelin and a lot of those like bands from that era. There's a lot of like underage groupies and stuff, and it's kind of like not spoken about. Yeah. Even though it happened and it's on document, it's like, oh, we just ignore that. It's like, well, it's not really cricket though, is it?
Well, yeah, Elvis married someone that was underage.
Yeah. Like,
so it's just like
I don't want to come across as being like, well, it's. I'm not trying to say, oh, it's fine for some people to do it and some other it isn't. It's just like, well, hang on. It's like what, like, it's a delicate balance, isn't it, between dragging everything out of the closet and being like, we should always talk about this whenever this person gets mentioned, and then equally like, don't forget this, and like, you know,
you bring one thing up, someone's going to say, but what about this?
Yeah,
it's just the way that it's going to happen. It's like Motley Crue definitely had sex with underage girls at shows. They would have done.
Yeah,
they would have been there. And they wouldn't have known, and they wouldn't have asked.
No.
So, same with the Stones. We've already said about Led Zeppelin. David Bowie had a relationship with a 14-year-old in the late 70s, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. Just go on and on and on. I was going to say about the kind of going the other way into kind of unreasonable reaction to something. I watched some independent pilot for a TV show called Has Been Hotel.
Okay.
And there seems to have been, it came out like late last year, I think. It's like a half-hour pilot. It took them 3 years to do, because there's like 2 or 3 animators for this whole thing. And there seems to have been some furore about the way that the characters are portrayed. And bearing in mind that this is a TV show that's set in hell to start with.
Okay.
The main character is a lesbian that's in a lesbian couple.
Right.
One other character is a gay porn star.
Okay.
Who is a drug addict. And there is a scene where the main character is speaking to a news reporter. She goes to shake a hand, and the news reporter turns around and says, "I don't touch the gays."
Oh, Jesus.
However, people are now saying that the people that are making the show are homophobic because of that line, even though the main character is a lesbian in a lesbian couple.
Right, yeah.
And they've also said that, they're saying that all gay people are drug addicts. It's like, no, he's a drug addict that's gay. Like, it doesn't...
Yeah.
And the thing is as well, is that it's set in hell. The people that are there are in hell. Like, literally, it's hell.
Yeah.
If the people were good, why would they be in hell? And it just, apparently, as far as I can tell, like, big old storm in a teacup, basically, that a very liberal person has made a show. It took her 3 years to create, and then in the space of a month, people were like, "You're a homophobe because your gay characters aren't depicted in the way that we like."
Yeah.
And you have a homophobic comment by someone who is obviously an antagonist.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you don't make the villains be bad and say bad things, what are they meant to do?
Yeah.
And so basically they dragged her name through the mud, essentially, and started like going through like her old like portfolios and stuff to try and find stuff on her, essentially, to try and stop everything. I don't know why, because they're like, "Oh, we'll get her cancelled." It's like, from what? It isn't on a channel or a network. She made it all herself. So yeah, that's kind of just is completely the other end of the spectrum, is that you have a villain in something who says something anti-gay, and then you're saying that the creator of the TV show is anti-gay, even though there are several gay characters in the main cast.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of this now. And this is something I'm not a fan of, like the whole cancel culture thing. There's some instances of it. It's like, oh yeah, fair enough. This whatever you're rallying against probably, like I say, probably like sometimes does deserve to be shut down, or whatever. But a lot of the time, it's so knee jerk now. It's like, oh, this needs to be cancelled. This needs to be cancelled. I saw something the other day, and it was someone was like, oh, we need to cancel Genghis Khan. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, he did all these abhorrent things. He shouldn't be celebrated. I was like, as far as I'm aware, like, most of us know the history of, like, the mad, like, the stuff he did. And it's not, like, celebrated. It's just like, this is the facts. This is history. It's just...
Yeah, I don't know anyone that celebrates Genghis Khan.
No, they're like, oh, they see him as, like, this leader where really just ravaged lands and people and stuff. It's like, yeah, we know that because we've done the history. If anything, you've just shown your own ignorance, like, and gaps in your own knowledge. But that's, to me, that's just insane. No one's going around now going, oh yeah, Genghis Khan, good old boy, like, flipping make the Khanate great again. Like, I don't understand that. And then another thing, like, recently that happened. So I don't know if you saw about this. So The Killers, obviously the band The Killers, it's come up that basically a member... So this is the thing, this is like a big stretch. And I can't remember what year it was, but sometime in the like 2010 onwards, or maybe just like 2009 or something. And at a point where The Killers were massive.
Yeah.
Which is important detail here. A member of the touring crew, as in like the tech crew. So obviously, for anyone who understands how bands on that level operate, they're not travelling with their crew.
No,
they're in their own buses. It's not like our band, if we've got the fact we don't have a crew, what we're on about. But if we had someone teching with us, they'd be in the van with us. They'd be hanging out with us. They'd be at the shows with us. Yeah.
Yeah, if you get to like a low mid-level signed touring band, I don't know, like periphery or something.
Yeah.
You'd be in the bus with the crew.
Yeah.
You get to the Killers.
You're like a stadium band.
There is a bus just for the band.
Yeah. Probably a bus for just each member, like, if we're going to be real.
Potentially on the relationship with the band.
Yeah.
The crew will go with the equipment.
Yeah.
Separately.
And
I think people neglect that when it's a stadium level band, the stage and stuff is bought by the band. Like, it's not something that the venue provides.
Yeah, don't just wheel that out of the cloakroom.
Yeah, it's something that's shipped in to be used by the band.
Yeah.
The tech crew go with that. As far as I'm aware, if you're a rigger, you will have little, if not no, interaction with any member of the actual band at all.
Yeah.
You probably won't see them because when they're playing, you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Because that's when you get to sleep, is when the gig is going on. You'll get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and then you get woken up when curtain call is, and then you have to pack everything down, get it in the bus, and then you go to the next place.
Yeah.
And it's normally like a 9-10 a.m. load-in.
Yeah.
If not earlier, because sound check is probably at 4. So you've got, 5 hours to set everything up again. Then you set it up, they do sound check, if anything needs changing, you change it. Doors, you go to sleep, you wake up, you pack it down again, you get in the van or bus or whatever, and you're shipped off again. Like, I think that, I don't know, I think the general public population's notion of touring when you're not in the band is that you're with the band, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think people think it's a lot more glamorous than it really is.
Like when I've spoken to riggers and stuff when I was doing stuff at the Fringe, and the Fringe is somewhat tiny.
Yeah.
But they're turning over a lot of artists during a day.
Yeah.
The interaction is very minimal. It's get the shit ready, and then they're on. You do your cues that they've given you. Then when it's over, they leave. They might say thanks, but that's it. And this is on a small comedy level, like 300 people or to 600 people kind of thing. But there's no personalization or like interaction between tech and the artist, barring just the literal business part of it.
Yeah.
And if you're in a stadium level band and you're not the direct lighting guy, the direct sound guy, or the monitor mixer more probably, because that's the one that the band are shouting at. Lighting is normally done beforehand and is pre-programmed a lot of the time. It's very rare that you'll have a guy there doing the cues manually for a stadium band.
Yeah.
Sound guy's probably got a preset that gets modified according to the shape of the stadium or whatever. And then you've got the monitor guy. Everyone else does not need to speak to the band at any point.
No. And yeah, exactly. So bearing all of that in mind, and also bearing in mind this wasn't the Killer's own crew. This is like a obviously professional company that have been employed for
I should say as well.
It's not like
the bands don't hire a crew a lot of the time unless you're like Metallica.
Yeah, like Brandon Flowers isn't belling his mates up like, "Come on, lads, let's build a stage." You know, like they've been hired. Yeah. They're an external company that have been hired to do this massive tour. And what happened? One of the members of that crew, I think I might be having my details wrong, but it was definitely something along those lines. I think like sexually assaulted a woman, like a fan,
right,
or someone in attendance, and it's come to light now, basically. And to to their credit, even that's something they would not, like saying, they would not have been aware of this at all. Like the band themselves, of course they wouldn't. Like saying, there's no interaction between those levels. To their credit and their management's credit, they've issued like really lengthy statement. Like, obviously, we feel awful that it's happened to a fan. We'll be instigating a thorough investigation into, like, with the help of the company, into this person, and obviously at the time that we were using them as an employee. They didn't have to say all that because really it is out of their hands. But you've got people going, oh, trying to blame them. It's like, it's not it literally isn't their fucking fault. Like, there's nothing they could have done about that. It's not, and like I say, it's very different between like being a mid-tier, low-tier band. It's like one of your crews on this. It's like you probably would have caught on that that's happened. There's no way they're going to know that's gone on. And
it's like the decapitated thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's very murky because that got thrown out, but during the time that it was happening, people were very willing to throw them under the bus.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, but it goes half of the course of who are you going to believe, the touring band or the girl. So, yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah. I mean, with the whole killer situation, it hasn't been like there's been a massive reaction where people are like, it's their fault. Like, by and large, I think most people understood, like, obviously the workings of it, like, oh, there's no way they could have been privy to this or prevented it or whatever. They wouldn't have been aware of it. It's just like there's few voices that are like, oh, cancel the killers. And it's just like, what? Like, I think there's a lot. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's so knee jerk now. A lot of people's reactions. It's like,
I almost think sometimes with things where people are saying stuff that's so ridiculous, it's almost as if they're just an agent provocateur to make legitimate things that should be addressed just fall into the same category.
Yeah, maybe there is an element of that. Like, and this is a problem I have with a lot of this, when like it's like, cancel this, cancel that, blah blah. It's like, whoa. It's like you are diminishing like stuff that really should be getting pulled down here, and it's so there are some scumbags that do need to be called out, like 100%. But it becomes like boy who cried wolf.
Yeah, and I think that when we had the Black Lives Matter stuff, that Netflix removing certain episodes of certain TV shows doesn't help.
No.
Because they're removing them without context. And a lot of them, the context was that they're being racist in universe. And that it's not all right.
Yeah.
So pulling something where someone's being called out for wearing blackface isn't going to help.
No.
That's a knee-jerk reaction from them to appease no one, I guess, just to almost show that they're doing something. And they could have done nothing. Or what they should have done is actually have a top-down discussion about representation of people of colour in the media.
Yeah.
Which would have been more beneficial. But that's what they did. And by doing that, it just kicked everyone off, saying, oh, they're trying to censor everything, blah, 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 blah. They're repressing freedom of speech, all that crap.
That's it, isn't it? The irony of that is you're giving fuel to the people, like, we're being, like, us whiteys are being oppressed, our culture's being deleted. It's like, no, it isn't. But yeah, it gives those people...
It gives them ammunition.
Yeah, it gives them credence. Like, well, they think it gives them credence what they're saying. It's just like, oh, fucking hell. Like, yeah, no education comes of that. No. It's like, what would be better is to just put up a disclaimer at the start of these things, like, this contains depictions of blah, blah, whatever, or trying to, like,
Yeah, Yeah, it's like what happened with Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry cartoons have a disclaimer at the beginning of them saying the depiction of I can't remember the character's name. Could be construed as offensive in modern times. It is a product of the era that it was made. Please bear this in mind. And then it's just left as is. I think they tried to revoice over her.
Yeah, was it like the mum or like the woman kind of?
The woman, yeah.
Yeah.
And they ended up making it worse because people just leave it how it was, and just put the disclaimer in it, and it will be fine.
Yeah.
Like don't try and muck around with it to try and make it all right for now.
Yeah.
Like, don't try and be a revisionist and go over it. It's just leave it. It's done. It's been like that for decades.
Yeah.
Just put the disclaimer on it.
And I think in a way as well, it's it's important for those things to be there, so you can look back at that. You can show people back at those things and go, "This is why this isn't okay now." You've got that context to compare it to. Goes, this used to be considered acceptable, but it's not, and now you can see why it isn't because of that. Certain stereotypes have been and tropes have been able to proliferate through entertainment and stuff. But we know that's not cool. But it's important to have that to look at. It's without getting overarching about it or pushing it into a different category. It's almost like looking back at history, isn't it? It's like this used to be all right, but now it isn't, and we know it isn't. But this is how we came to know that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you take that away, no one will understand why those things are upsetting to people or not sensitive.
We should say that this isn't the same as pulling down a statue of a slave owner.
Oh no, 100%.
Just for clarity, pulling down a statue of a slave owner doesn't mean that we're erasing the history of that slave owner.
No,
it's very easy to find.
Yeah,
the history of it. It's not being erased, as people like to say.
No, it isn't being erased.
Where we're talking about that stuff is being pulled from where it's accessible, so it's no longer accessible. That is erasure.
Yeah. That's the thing. People go, when the people are belly aching about statues being put, erasing the history. It's no, the history's there. If you want to actually go and read it, what it's doing is it's stopping the celebration of that history, because that's the only reason you build a monument to something.
Yeah,
to celebrate.
You don't see a statue of Goebbels in the middle of Berlin.
No,
it's and still people know about him. Surprise!
There's that joke going around, wasn't it? It goes, it was, what is it? It goes, I never knew about Adolf Hitler because I'd never seen any statues of him.
Yeah,
it's total bollocks argument. It's not erasing history. It's just upset. It's upset the people that needed to be upset. But
yeah, well, the Edward Colston statue in Bristol, there's been a petition every year for at least 10 years, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
To have that taken down, and the council have basically just gone, we'll take it under advice.
Yeah.
And then people were like, it's because I think we've had this discussion before. It's because the council are Labour and that's why, because Labour are racist. But they're in a sticky situation because Edward Colston was a Tory, and if you have a Labour council taking down a Tory MP's statue, it just opens up a can of worms.
Yeah.
So I understand why it was difficult, because that's how it can be construed. It won't be council takes down slave owner. It will be Labour council takes down Conservative MP statue.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's difficult.
One thing I wanted to kind of ask, are there any bands or actors or anything who you actively I know we've done Lost Prophets, but it's not like we actively listen to them. Is there any artists or anything you actually can't really listen to or enjoy now because of things that have been done by them? But I've got at least one.
See, this is the weird thing for me, and I think I know what your one's going to be because we've spoken about it before. But
yeah,
oh yeah, actually, I do. So in the early 2000s, not in the early 2000s, the early 2010s, I got introduced to a label which is just one guy who did all different genres of electronic music, but under different pseudonyms.
okay,
And it was under the umbrella of Lapfox, and all of the characters were like anthropomorphic, like cartoon characters,
okay,
and they all had a separate genre. So one would be like not synthwave, but like because synthwave wasn't around then, chiptunes, electro house, breakcore, drum and bass, like but so different things, and they would all be under different names. And there would be a lot coming out, basically. There'd be like one album kind of like a month or something, or a track or whatever. And I listened to that like quite religiously. And I can't remember exactly, but I think he tried to have sex with someone who was asleep at a party.
oh god,
And they woke up. And then someone else said that he had done something similar.
right,
So 2 cases of kind of like sexual assault, basically.
yeah,
His partner didn't out him, but basically said, I believe what these people have said. And then, like, no more music came out for obvious reasons. I've kind of stopped listening to any of that stuff because I just think of that. And I know that they've rebranded. I can't remember what the rebranding is. I can't remember what the name of the person is, to be honest. And I haven't listened to any of it just because, yeah. So that's one.
yeah. So yeah, you know what my one is, I think.
Is it Crystal Castles?
Bingo. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, anyone obviously who is a fan of Crystal Castles will know the issue that I'm going to discuss. But for anyone who isn't or isn't aware of the band or their history or the members, to kind of sum it up, they're a duo, like a female-male duo. Alice Glass was the vocalist, and a guy called Ethan Caff did like the instrumentals and that side of it. And basically, what it has transpired as, and I believe her, but I believe what she said.
Is it still ongoing?
I think it went to court and it's kind of gone quiet.
Right.
She's putting music out soon, like her own music.
Okay.
But basically, she left the band and a new vocalist replaced her. And then maybe 6 months, a year later, she kind of came out and said, look, but like the easiest way that I can describe it without going into length and going on a tangent, it was essentially like an abusive relationship, but where she was kind of captive, not literally like held hostage, but essentially had no power to like leave that dynamic and leave that situation. So
yeah,
I think it's important to go back to the origins of the band, and then there are things that I was like it's hard for me because I really love Crystal Castles music, but a big part of why I loved Crystal Castles music was Alice Glass and like her on stage energy, like lyrics. But I can kind of still listen to bits, but I'll explain why I can't really listen to it like I used to be able to. So for context, when the band started, Ethan Caff was pretty much in his mid-20s already, and Alice Glass was 15.
Right.
So when you look back in hindsight, it's like, that's a bit seedy and it's a bit dodgy. And
yeah,
she was pretty much like a kind of wayward young girl. Didn't come from like a secure home and stuff like that. So someone who's easily kind of manipulated, like
Yeah.
you know, not to get my flipping psychologist hat on, but it's classic case, you know, like someone who's you've been taken under someone's wing and whatever, but you know, you're probably like it's very easy to manipulate people like that and take advantage of them.
Yeah.
The band obviously became a thing, blew up, and blah blah blah, and it was kind of like there was always this kind of element of like, oh, are they in a relationship or are they strictly a band? And it was always like, no, it's like we're just like we're not in a relationship kind of thing, you know, like it's about we're a band and we're like a brother and sister kind of thing.
Right.
And like Ethan Cath was like, yeah, I'm very protective of her. There's some footage, like, because I was saying I was like a super fan, like obsessed with him. And there's like footage from a show from like years ago where someone rushes the stage and like makes towards Ali, and like Ethan like full on like basically like rugby tackles this guy off of the stage, like runs out from behind his Simpson stuff. So you're like, oh, you know, he's like he looks after her, blah blah, classic trope and whatever. And a lot of the lyrics are about being vulnerable, and with the benefit of like with the context and like hindsight, it's kind of like, oh, I think this has come from a place that is maybe a bit more real than everyone thought it was. And there's a lot of lyrics about abuse and being controlled and kind of lost youth and heartbreak, but like in a really dark way, and relationships observed like in a really cold way, almost like so there's a song called Courtship Dating, and there's like one of the lyrics in the chorus is stove burns on my hands, show them to my friends, and it's like there's a lot of themes of abuse and stuff interwoven with relationship themes, and they're like at the time like, oh, this is just dark and cool, like and now it's like, oh, okay. And I remember reading this is one of the things where I do think this is true, what she said. So basically she said like she was like sexually abused by him, wasn't allowed to do anything on her own. He wouldn't let her even let her have a mobile phone. Like once she had a mobile phone, and he broke it in front of her, and he's like, "You're not allowed a phone. Like you can't contact anyone without my supervision and stuff." I remember reading an interview in NME with them, probably around 2011, and in that interview, it is actually mentioned. They're like, "Yeah, neither of us have a phone. When we're not on tour together, we just drift apart and just kind of reconvene when it's time to do music." And you're like, oh, that's so mysterious and cool, like when you're young, and obviously you haven't had this insight into this situation. But when she mentioned this thing, like when she made her statement, I was like, I remember that interview, and that was something that was mentioned, and I was like, fuck, like, and I just people are like, oh, she's just trying to ruin Crystal Castles. Or like, I'm not being funny, right? But Crystal Castles aren't making like I know it's not it, and this isn't to say like I'm not saying anyone who calls out a musician or a film star or someone is trying to make money. I don't mean that, because that's the kind of bullshit that gets people like actual victims like ignored, because like, oh, you're just trying to make money. Like, but for context, Crystal Castles are a pretty much underground concern. They were never like like they were big, but they were never like mainstream successful, you know.
Yeah.
She's gonna make really no financial gains from taking Ethan Cath to court, you know. So
should lose money.
Yeah, so I think that argument is bollocks. And when you look at the themes of the music and stuff, and when you look back at historic interviews and stuff, there's just so much of it. It's like, fucking hell, this is almost like hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
And it is kind of like, oof. To me, I believe it, and because of the themes of the music are so entrenched in everything that's kind of come out now, it is kind of uncomfortable to listen to.
Yeah, because you're equating what was the lyrics to what was actually happening.
Yeah, and that's normally like, and that's not me being like, oh my god, like it's awful and it's shit, and like I don't want it to be like selfish, like, oh, I can't enjoy Crystal Castles anymore. No, there's a bigger picture. It's like, I can't enjoy, like, that's not the worst thing that's happened. I can't enjoy this band in the same way, but it's just like, I can't kind of shake that if I listen to it. And it's like, it makes me a bit sad when I listen to it. I'm like, oh, this is like, quite probably someone was really going through this like really shit, awful ordeal. And it's music that I used to like really enjoy, and you didn't think of it in that. Obviously, it's like I'm saying, some of the lyrics and that are like quite obviously like quite dark and stuff. But you just think that's an artistic thing. You don't think, oh fuck, this is actually going on.
Yeah.
And so now with those revelations, it's kind of like, I don't really feel comfortable like listening to that anymore. And it's probably a case of like, I don't think there will be another Crystal Castles record. Like there was a new album out with the new singer, but I don't think there will be any more Crystal Castles material because of this. But if there was, I couldn't buy it.
No.
Like,
has the new vocalist said anything?
No, and it's weird. Like the new vocalist is almost like, well, to be honest, like Ethan made his statement when the accusations came out, and that was about all that came from him. But the new vocalist, as far as I'm aware, hasn't really had much, even before this all happened, didn't really have much presence in the press. And something else I find really weird is the new vocalist sounds basically like exactly the same. Not in a way of like, oh, the voice is manipulated to sound the same. It's like, you've kind of... I don't know how to word what I want to say, but it's like, it's almost like if you are a predatory person and that kind of, it's like you're looking for this certain type of girl, and it's almost, it's a weird one. It's strange, you know. It's like you're looking for, you see them as a commodity and someone you can like control, kind of thing. It's weird. Like,
do they look similar?
No, they don't really look the same. Like, but it's just like the fact of like, it's like they basically like they've made him sound as similar as possible. Like, he's obviously said to her, you need to do this kind of vocal style, and that it's like a big element of control there, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I do think it has some. I think it's got credence to it. I personally do believe it.
Yeah.
Which is like, I was gutted. I was like, oh, this is awful. But again, that's minor compared to obviously what may well have gone on here. Like me being like, oh, I can't really listen to Crystal Castles now. That's small fry. You know, that's not really that important in the scale of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the most notable one for me. Like, definitely, that's one where I've struggled to kind of like listen to the music.
Yeah, I think a lot of the other ones that we've spoken about, like I don't overtly listen to it like anyway. So it's difficult like for me to say, oh, there was one that I really like listened to, and then something happened and then I couldn't listen to it again. The only time that I've had that is with Lapfox. There hasn't been any other bands where someone has been outed for doing something. I guess Young and in the Way.
Oh yeah.
But they just some accusations came up. They said, we deny the accusations, however our name's been tarnished, so we're going to stop. And then nothing else happened. Like, I don't even know if the people that were involved went to court or anything. It just went,
yeah,
that was it, done. And I guess if it came on, I probably wouldn't turn it off, but I haven't. Whereas before, I'd put on Young and in the Way out of choice. I'm not reaching to put them on now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, it's very rare. Like, there will be because like we mentioned at the start of this conversation, there is art created by people who you so vehemently disagree with their point of view and like their ordeals, their ideals, that you're never gonna support their art or listen to it. But I think it's like when it's something you've supported and then it kind of like gets ruined, it's like, and I think I think that's the biggest challenge. Like, to you, it's like that's the moral quandary, isn't it? It's like, do I keep listening to this thing because I enjoy it, or do I choose not to support it because I'm supporting someone who's done something actually quite awful here?
Yeah,
you know, and it's. And I guess it's different for certain, like for everyone, isn't it? Because maybe for me the reason I felt it so acutely with Crystal Castle in particular is because I got so into that band, and you feel like invested in it, and you're like, oh shit, it's not like a casual, not like a. I'm sure to a casual listener, they probably wouldn't even register that.
Yeah,
and that doesn't make. I want to make it clear, like, I don't mean that makes them a bad person. It's just a different experience. Like, if someone just had like 5 of their songs on, sound like an old fart. If someone had 5 of their songs on their iPod,
they like, or just on a playlist or something.
Yeah, like because they like the singles. I don't expect them to have that same reaction of like, oh shit, you know.
Because you were a big fan of it. It's more cutting.
Yeah. Well, and in the interest of fairness, and I've kind of touched upon it briefly earlier, I'm sure there are people who were really big fans of Chris Brown who probably couldn't listen to him after what he'd done. As much as there are people who are still continuing to listen, I'm sure there are people who are like, oh, I can't listen to it anymore. So I get it, you know. And
in regards to something else, I don't know if it's his birthday or death day today, but H.P. Lovecraft is another one.
Yes, actually, like, yeah, I know about the controversies and stuff. I've never really read his works. Obviously, I know, like, he's very renowned and such. But yeah, I know about the kind of the bad shit with him.
Yeah, but and again, it's one of those things where, like, if you read certain stories in a certain way, in regards to his fiction, you could portray it as that he's talking about Jewish people or people of colour.
Yeah.
But there are letters and things and editorials that are overtly racist and anti-Semitic, which is how we know that that's what his opinion of things like that were.
Yeah.
But I don't want to understate how common, in regards to anti-Semitism, how common it was in that time. I mean, Disney, Henry Ford, a lot of the kind of American early moguls of industry were staunchly of the opinion that Jewish people were going to steal their money.
Mm.
So it's a difficult one, because if you read what he said, you're like, well, yes, this is ridiculous. But it was in the late 19th, early 20th century, which makes it a bit more debatable, because you're talking 10, 20 years after the American Civil War, for fuck's sake. Like, that's... I think people forget how late the American Civil War was. I think people get it confused with the War for Independence.
Right, yeah.
The American War for Independence was the 1770s. The American Civil War was the 1850s? Maybe later, actually. Maybe 1880s? Oh, I don't know. I could search it, but I'm not going to. But it's in the late 19th century.
Yeah.
Like Victorian period. Like, so it's kind of like, well, they were having a war between them. For various reasons. The southern states were trying to secede from the Union for other reasons. It just, if you want to boil it down to slavery, you can boil it down to slavery. But there's other reasons to do with it. But it's that era that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like it's not that long after in the grand scheme of things that we're talking about Lovecraft. So time kind of comes into it. It's like, and this kind of goes back to your Metallicas and your Panteras and stuff, is that if they were that age in this era, would have the same stuff happened? Yes or no?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the thing. It's like, well, who can say? Because they're not that age in 2020 at the same time that they were in the mid 80s or early 90s or whatever. So it's difficult. There's the thing with that NAMM show thing from 2002. As a separate thing, at that point in time at the NAMM show, a lot of the guitar companies had booth girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 2 or 3 years ago, Dean had 2 booth girls, and the internet lost its absolute shit.
Yeah, attitudes have definitely changed, like, for the better in that respect. Because it's such yeah, it's mad actually. Like, I remember, like, when I used to get, not that the magazine would push, like, the magazine's content wasn't along those lines, but obviously, like, they carry advertisements. So when I used to buy Total Guitar, like, every month, like, I remember when Jackson's website had, like, Jenna Jameson all over it.
Yeah.
And stuff. So yeah, it was, like, pretty much the thing. And like you wonder, like, I say you wonder, I mean sarcastically, it's like, oh, you wonder why it was such a barrier for women, like, getting into playing the instrument and actually being taken seriously and respected. You know, and it's like, well, you basically looked at like meat. Like,
yeah, it's
not now. Like, I think it's changed. Like, most people are pretty fucking with the times now, and, like, you know, actually respect with female musicians as they. Ugh.
I mean, there's always another side to the coin though, because if you look at the debate in regards to grid girls for motor racing,
yeah,
so they got rid of grid girls for F1, and there were people that were complaining because, and it was women complaining. They're like, "You've just fucked my career over."
Yeah.
Because of your agenda. It's like, and it was like, obviously it's not the same grid girls, it's different for every race. But it's like, they're basically saying, I'm a model, this gave me a lot of money, and all I had to do was stand there with a sign. And they're just like, it was an easy gig, it gave me a lot of money, and now I can't do it anymore. So it's like, well, it's always going to be that thing, isn't it? It's like, is it consensual? Yes. Is it degrading? We would say yes. However, the people that are doing the booths or are doing the sign holding on grids or whatever, or clap for the podium, may say no, which was the case at the time. So, I mean,
yeah, I guess it's
it's not going to go back. I'll put it that way. It's not going to go back to the way, like, to seeing grid girls and everything, and there being booth girls for guitar stuff or at trade shows and things like that. I don't think it's going to, just for the sake of eye candy, I don't think that's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes, even with virtuous intentions, you are sometimes fucking over people.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess the avenue that it's being used for is important to, like, that's a big part of it. So with the whole culture of it in guitar, I guess with the context of it in, like, guitar and, like, music culture previously, it was kind of like the women in the adverts, it wasn't like they were literally there just to, like, it's it's just eye candy, isn't it? And to sell a product, and it's not. They're obviously models and whatever.
They're not players. They don't play.
Yeah, it's like really, you shouldn't need to have a half-naked woman holding a guitar to sell that guitar. Like, that's not her fault. Yeah. That's not the model's fault. That's not what I mean. But with something like music and being in a band or learning an instrument, it's like when that, unfortunately, like that just reinforced a lot of negative attitudes, like, and kept it like male dominated, and it probably did dissuade a lot of like young girls and women from like picking the instrument up, kind of thing. It's like, oh, I'm not, like, this is just what, like, I'm just going to be considered like a second rate, and you see shit like that, and it's like, oh, it's a bit off-putting. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like, I know it's a bit of a funny comparison to make, because Formula One is, all the drivers are men, but what I'm trying to say is, like, they
have a diversity problem in general.
Yeah, like, I've forgotten what they're even called now. What were track girls? Is that right?
Grid girls.
Grid girls. Sorry. Grid girls aren't like, whether people agreed with it or not. Grid girls weren't stopping people entering that sport, is what I'm trying to say. I know that's kind of by proxy because they're men.
Some people would say that they were.
Oh, really?
Because it perpetuated an attitude of male chauvinism in general.
Yeah.
So some people would say that maybe it did.
Okay.
There were some female.
Fair enough.
There were some female drivers that said, yeah, it wasn't the greatest. And it was like, well, why can't I have a grid guy in front of my car?
Fair argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm not nowhere near as obviously knowledgeable about motorsport than you are. So I didn't even know there was like female like drivers in the sport and stuff. Like,
well, there isn't in F1.
No,
there hasn't been for a long time.
You get different formula, don't you? Like divisions and stuff.
So they did a Formula W, which is like a women's single-seater championship.
Yeah.
But then that got tagged with like, oh, it's just box ticking, blah blah blah.
Yeah. I guess with the whole music and guitar thing, like, it's such a hangover of like a crappy attitudes from like. This is not, you've heard me shit on hair metal a lot, so this is no mystery to you, but it just reminds me of that hair metal stuff, and just like women were only there to be in videos and be.
I think the 70s was worse, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe probably start. Definitely big for it.
In the 80s, you still had, okay, fair enough. Blondie started in like the 70s, but
yeah,
you had like Joan Jett, Susie and the Banshees.
Yeah.
Susie Quattro.
I'm thinking like.
I think there was more rock. Although rock was popular music back then, so it's difficult to say what it would have been like by comparison now.
Yeah.
And I'm only picking off the kind of the top ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But I know what you mean. The prevailing thought, especially in stuff like glam, was women are objects.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the way, like, the advertising and stuff that's still going on, like, it's probably up to like 2010 and stuff. It's like it's kind of a trickle down from that, I guess.
Yeah.
And I remember when like it was almost like there was a kind of spate of like bands where it's almost like there's a token female in the band, and that's not to take anything away from the actual member themselves, but it's like there seems to be this thing with like new metal bands. We have a token female bass player and stuff like that, and it's kind of like you're selling her as like eye candy, really. And it's just it's a weird one. Like I'm glad for the most part we have moved away from that. And it's there's that whole thing of like it shouldn't be like, oh, they're a good female musician. It's like they're a good musician.
Yeah.
It's a knotty subject, like, and obviously like for actual proper conversation we need to have like a woman in the conversation. But
Yeah.
I hope it kind of is quite clear, like what the point we're trying to make.
Yeah, the tokenism for it, or the female fronted as a genre, needs to stop.
Yeah, it's like,
because that was a issue.
Yeah, definitely, and again, it's not the women that are making that genre tag. It's it's predominantly like an industry that is still predominantly populated by men who've kind of come up with that, and it's like, no, from the off, then you've already segregated it into something else. It's like, take it as an equal thing.
Yeah, Nightwish are not Venom Prison.
No,
it does.
And yeah,
it's like they're not the same at all.
Flipping Leaves' eyes aren't Walls of Jericho.
Yeah,
imagine that as a tour. Fucking hell.
I think I'd leave after Walls of Jericho finished,
yeah.
to be honest. But it is that, isn't it? It just falls into that trap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just say it's a difficult one. It's not a difficult one. It's just people's attitudes need to change, and they are changing. So it's
But you still get some knuckle draggers, but they are the problem is they have they're the ones that shout the loudest, but really, I'd say they are the minority. I think you just see about it more because they're the ones that just want to pipe up and put their opinions out there all the time.
Yeah, people that want to say negative stuff are always more likely to post than
and generally it's because
things.
they feel threatened. Really, they're like, oh, the way I look at things is being eroded, so I'm going to shout about it. Like, well, yeah, fuck off.
Yeah,
But I guess we've kind of veered off the point, but it was still kind of within the wheelhouse, I guess. But I think I've pretty much said all I can say on the subject of art and artists.
I think we've covered quite a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like we always say, obviously anyone who's listening, anyone who wants to contribute, if there's any instances you think we've kind of missed out, there's some obvious big cases that we haven't addressed, and I think it's because everyone's well aware of those situations. There's no point in going over it again. Like I've mentioned Michael Jackson briefly, but that's everyone knows that. There's no point in kind of going in depth on that. We're not going to shine a light on anything new.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say is when you're saying about Crystal Castles, it made me think about Kesha.
Oh yeah, and the whole Dr. Luke thing.
Yeah, so that's a weird one because Dr. Luke's name isn't on a lot of stuff. It's in the background, but he obviously there's a lot of stuff going on with her.
Yeah.
Obviously, that wouldn't stop someone listening to it because she's the victim.
Yeah.
And like Ike and Tina Turner.
Yeah.
An abusive relationship. So those were two other ones, but I haven't got much to add about them.
But we can cover that in our Tina Turner special.
Right. Should we close it up?
Yeah, so as always, anyone who's been listening to us, thanks, really do appreciate it. Also we'll keep doing episodes we've got no intention of stopping doing it, and hopefully we can just keep evolving it, talking about interesting stuff. Again, if there's anything people do want to bring to our attention that they think we might be interested in, or they want to hear our thoughts on, our socials are always open. Just chuck us a message or a comment. At the BritHick, Insta, Facebook. And yeah, just thanks again to everyone, really.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. Cheers.